mostly because I don't want to know what the repercussions of that would be. Yeah. If you have your Bibles with you tonight, I want to invite you to look with me at the book of Proverbs, chapter 15. Proverbs, chapter 15, and we'll begin our reading in verse number 1. Miss Linda might need to really read verse number 1 right now. In fact, I probably should just ask her to read it out loud for us so that we are sure that she gets it, Brother Jerry. Proverbs 15, beginning in verse number 1, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Yeah. When, it's not uncommon, right, for if somebody comes to you in wrath, you're often tempted to be harsh in your response. That's a fleshly response, right? If somebody comes at you in wrath and anger and hatred and just in an ugly way, we're tempted to respond in a similar way. But wisdom here shows us the value of a soft answer, of a kind answer, of not just responding to things in the same manner that you may have received them in. And a soft answer is one that is not. It doesn't have sharp edges, doesn't have points. In other words, you're not responding in a harsh manner back. You're not responding in a way that you're going to throw daggers back at whoever it was that may have come to you. And we see that whenever that happens, it says that it can turn away wrath. It's sometimes there has to be somebody in that situation, and if both of you, the person comes to you in an angry manner or in a brash way or in a way that is unpleasant, and you respond back to them, what's typically going to be accomplished? Nothing. Because now you got two folks that are upset, mad, and angry, and it's probably just going to continue to go back and be a back and forth thing. However, if one of those individuals, and it's going to have to be, obviously, if they come to you in that manner, you have to be the individual that responds with a kind word, with a soft answer. That doesn't mean that you're not hurt. That doesn't mean that you're not upset. But you have to respond in the right way. And what we know and what we can see here is that can turn away wrath. That can keep things from escalating. If you will, and so we have to understand that a harsh word stirs up anger. A harsh response to wrath only tends to stir up more anger, and again, it feels good in the moment. I'll be truthful, and if you're truthful, you feel the same way. When somebody comes to you in that manner and you respond back in that same manner, it feels good right then and there. However, it typically ends up making the situation worse, and so we have to understand that. Verse number 2 says, "The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness." So this is the wise man or woman will show their right use of knowledge by the things that they say, the words that they say. The words of their tongue demonstrate their wisdom. So you're using knowledge rightly, and you're expressing that you know prudently and gracefully, taking due care both of what and when and whom and in what manner you speak. It's important that we understand that we use that knowledge rightly and by the things that we say. Because on the other side of this, he says, the mouth of fools pours out foolishness, right? They're going to be revealed by their words. It isn't enough for a man or woman to claim that they have wisdom in their heart and in their mind, and because what they say is ultimately going to prove either their wisdom or their folly. Verse number 3. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. So wisdom understands that we know that we serve a God who is ever present. We serve a God who is all-seeing. He knows everything under the sun. He sees everything that goes on. And, we understand that everything is under the watchful eye of God. He sees us in every place, even whenever nobody else can. That's wisdom. Because, again, you're probably going to be more mindful if you hold on to that truth and you apply that and you say, hey, listen, I know God sees me wherever, so therefore I'm going to conduct myself in a way, the same way that I would if I were sitting in this church building on Sunday morning for all to see. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter what you all see, right? What matters is what God sees. And God sees and knows it all. And so the eyes of the Lord are in every place. And it says, keeping a watch on the evil and the good. We often think that God just kind of, we want Him to see the good. And sometimes I think that we feel like He doesn't see the evil. Not necessarily in our own lives, but in the lives of anybody. I'll stand before you tonight and I'll tell you that God is just as much aware of the evil going on in this world as you are. He is not caught by surprise. He is not unaware of any of it. And I love this, the fact that here he says, keeping watch. This is describing a very active and purposeful seeing. Not just he's kind of glancing about. No, he knows. He is watching intently. He is looking and he knows, this is far more than just God sees it. It's he's investigating. He's observing. He's keeping watch, not just on the good, but he is also watching upon the evil. It's never out of his sight. And, he's... when it comes to again, both evil and good, God's very well aware of it. The things that took place in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, God's aware of those things. That didn't listen, God knew about it before it was ever aired, before it ever happened. He was aware of it. It did not catch him by surprise. And so know that God is watching. He sees everything, evil and good. Verse number 4, a wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. What do you think it means? What do you think Solomon meant whenever he said that a wholesome tongue is a tree of life? Like a gentle tongue, yeah. Healthy, what was that back here? Yeah, and so, I think that covers the wholesome. I think that, when we speak truth and it's beneficial, right? When we speak positive things, good things, we're not here to, listen, my job is not to tear anybody down ever. That's not my job. That's not your job. My job is to share the love of God with them, to share the truth of God's Word. And does that hurt people sometimes? Absolutely it does. Hurts me sometimes. Right? If it don't hurt sometimes, you probably ain't reading it. Or you ain't reading it right. And so, but a wholesome tongue, whenever we're here to edify, we're here to build up. And, that's what a tree does. It's like a tree that continually brings, trees bring life in multiple ways. Number one, they can provide much needed shade in the heat of the day. And that provides comfort. That provides, some places that's the difference between, if you can get to shade, if you can't get to shade, it could be the difference between life or death in some cases, right? Somebody's out in the sun and it's beating down on. If they can't get to some shade, you never know what can happen if they get to the point of having to have, possibly having a heat stroke or something like that. So, because you know as well as I do, living here in South Georgia, the difference sometimes can be 10 degrees. You go from being out in the sun to underneath a tree, and it's just instant. Even though it's not much cooler, it's a lot cooler whenever you're in need of it. But it also, they provide fruit. Some provide food. Some provide other things. And that's what a wholesome tongue is. However, on the flip side, perverseness in it breaks the spirit. What is perverseness? Contrariness, twisted, crooked, corrupt. Basically the opposite of wholesome, right? It's not a good thing. And so if someone's tongue is perverse instead of being wholesome, then their words can break the spirit of others. We're not here to break anybody's spirit, right? We're here to build up, again, edify, encourage, and provide positive things for them. Again, doesn't mean that the truth sometimes may not hurt, but it's not our job, and that's not our job to stray away from the truth for somebody's comfort. However, even sometimes the way we present the truth, right? The truth can be presented in a harsh manner sometimes. However, if it's presented in love and compassion, and then I think it's more likely to not break somebody's spirit. Verse number 5. A fool despiseth his father's instruction, but he that regardeth reproof is prudent. We've seen this, no doubt that Solomon wrote Proverbs as advice from a father to his children. And so a fool would despise that wisdom that comes from a godly parent in God's Word. And however, he who receives correction is prudent. If we're learning wisdom is more than just knowing facts. Amen. I think would you all agree with that? That knowing and learning wisdom is more than learning facts. It is to receive correction. If you don't ever receive correction, then you probably have never got anything wrong, right? We've all received correction at some point, so we all messed up somewhere. We all did something wrong. We all made a mistake. If you don't ever receive correction and you don't think you've done anything wrong, then what's there to fix, right? However, at the same time, if you are not willing to accept correction, that's a problem, right? If you're not willing to allow somebody to correct you in your mistake, you're not gonna grow in wisdom. You're not going to grow in that area. And so if we're not willing to receive correction, if what we learn only confirms what we already know, it probably isn't wisdom that we're learning. Verse number 6. In the house of the righteous is much treasure, but in the revenues of the wicked is trouble. In the house of the righteous is much treasure, but in the revenues of the wicked is trouble. Because wisdom and godliness, when folks are living those, I don't want you to think financially prosperity, but they tend to prosper. When people are living for God, they're going to grow, they're going to mature, they're doing good. However, thankfully, the treasure in the house of righteousness, a lot of people want to equate it with material things, but it's not only material, it's treasures, it's spiritual. And so in the house of the righteous, we gain much spiritual treasure. Things that this world cannot offer us, things that this world cannot take away from us. But he says, in the revenue of the wicked is trouble. They earn, the things that they earn can be problems instead of treasures. They have trouble. They they can obtain great revenues. They can obtain the worldly side of that, but again, they're attended with much trouble and vexation and issues along the way. So they're going to bring, their wickedness brings trouble in their lives. Verse number 7. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the foolish doeth not so. Somebody who's wise, they want to share with people. They don't want to keep, it's not I have all this knowledge and I want to keep it for myself. Unfortunately, we treat the gospel that way sometimes. When we don't share it. But, the lips of the wise, they will spread or disperse knowledge and wisdom. It's within them and will be given to others by the words they say. However, on the other side of this is the heart of the fool. If it's not, wisdom isn't in the heart of the fool, right? So if it's not in the heart of the fool, guess where else it's not going to be? It's not going to be on their lips. They're not going to share it. They're not going to be able to spread the blessings of wisdoms to others, wisdom to others through their words. Verse number 8, the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is His delight. Sometimes people, and we've seen this when we studied Malachi, right? We've seen this, how God is not pleased with sacrifices from people who are not living for Him. If you're not living in obedience to Him, it doesn't matter what you do, whatever your sacrifice is, we think that because we're sacrificing, God should be pleased with it. That's not how it works. God is not concerned with the sacrifice if you're living a wicked life, if you're living an ungodly life. He's not, that's what He says here, that it's really becomes just a useless ritual. And again, that's exactly what He addressed with the Hebrew people in Malachi, was that, hey, listen, your offerings mean absolutely nothing to me. They're useless. They're pointless. You might as well quit. Because of your lifestyle and because of where you are, because of your wickedness. However, what He does say is, He says the prayer of the upright is His delight. God is delighted. Listen, He's delighted whenever we pick up that prayer line and have a conversation with Him. I don't know about you, but I'm terrible and can be terrible about returning phone calls. I don't do it intentionally. I'm terrible about calling the people I should call on a regular basis, like I should call them. I don't do it intentional. I'll be doing something and I'll think, man, I need to call so-and-so. And you know what'll happen? 3 days later and I'll say, never called them. Listen, however, when you do call them, and some of you may be on this situation where whenever certain people call you, it means something. It's important. It feels good to hear from them. Listen, God wants to hear from His people. God wants us to pray, and God delights. We delight God with our prayers, and the wicked one goes to the trouble and expense of because when you think about it, there was a lot of work involved in sacrifice, wasn't there? Yeah. You had to have the animal. You had to prepare the animal. You had to go through the processes. You had to do all the things. You had so there's a lot of work in that. And I think that's what we have to see here is that, listen, yes, that person may have put much more work and labor into what they did. However, God delights in us just coming to Him in conversation. Just talking to Him. He enjoys that. It brings delight to Him. And so we see verse number 9. The way of the wicked is an abomination unto the Lord, but He loveth him that followeth after righteousness. So again, a very similar statement to what we just read in verse number 8. Listen, again, God is going to reject the religious ceremonies of the wicked. For much more does God consider the sinful life of the wicked as an abomination, but He loves him who follows righteousness. This is the one that does so in surrender and love to God. Listen, I'm serving Him because I love Him. I'm living for Him because I'm surrendered to Him. I want to do this, and and we do what we do. It kind of goes along with what Jude advised, that we keep ourselves in the love of God. Why do you do what you do? I think means if you're doing it for the right reasons, God loves him who follows righteousness. Verse number 10. Correction is grievous unto him that forsaketh the way, and he that hateth reproof shall die. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but whenever somebody walks away, they depart from God's path, if you will. They will, well, when you look at this is correction, this is discipline. Guess what God's going to do? He's going to discipline them. If they're straying away, He is going to discipline them, and that discipline is just, it's a warning and opportunity to do what? God did this with the Hebrew people numerous times. He does it with us, whether we acknowledge that God's the one disciplining us or not, when He does. But God disciplined, we see it in Scriptures, the Hebrew people numerous times when they strayed away, when they got off where they were supposed to be, when they were not walking with Him and living for Him and honoring Him, and He disciplined them. That discipline was not I don't want anything to do with you. That discipline is not hey, I'm done with you. I don't care what happened previously. I don't care what promises I made to you. I'm done. No, it was an opportunity for them to change their ways and to get back. However, the one who rejects God's correction, these are folks that they're going to continue down the path that they're on, and so, and this goes with the simple. I don't know how somebody. There's a fine line here. Somebody who is saved and stumbles and falls is going to be absolutely miserable until they get back in God's will. I mean, miserable. They will not be happy. They will not find satisfaction. No matter what they're chasing after, they're going to be miserable. You want to know why? Because the Holy Spirit of God is going to continue to convict them. And let me just tell you something. That's no way for anybody to live life. Right? Nobody should want to live that way. However, there are people, and this is where I say it's a fine line, because how do I know? I don't know whether or not somebody's salvation testimony is simply that. It's their testimony to me. That's between them and God. They can answer all the right questions, say all the right things. However, there are some people that walk away and never come back because they were never saved. Either way, I feel like that it's no way to live. You're going to kill yourself. If you're saved and trying to live an ungodly life, you're going to be miserable in that and not happy, and you're going to struggle, or you're going to go and the end is destruction for those that were never saved, and they go out and they never come back, or never get right, I should say. Can't come back to something that they weren't. But God has discipline for those who walk away. Verse 11. Hell and destruction are before the Lord. How much more then the hearts of the children of men? Let's answer this question. What are, when you look at this, again, let's look at it. hell and destruction are before the Lord, how much more then the hearts of the children of men. These are two destinies. They're symbolic. Symbolically pictured as persons who are before the Lord. And the sobering truth is this, that God has a plan for both hell and destruction. And God sees what we cannot. Would you agree with that? God sees a lot of things that you and I cannot see, and these things are hell and destruction are presently invisible to us. However, they're not invisible to God. He's well aware they are before Him, and I would venture to say, if we could see hell and destruction, we would think and live very differently. If we could see them, but the whole idea here is God's surveillance extends further than ours does, and we should make sure that when we look at this, we have to understand that God sees that, and what He says here is His hell and destruction are before the Lord. How much more then? If He can see those things and He's aware of those, guess what? The hearts of the children of the Lord or the children of men. He's watchful over them. He knows us. And again, if God has a plan and purpose for these two destinies, it's much more true that He has a plan and purpose for humanity. And so we have to understand that. Verse number 12. A scorner loveth not one that reproveth him, neither will he go unto the wise. A scorner, we've talked about this. This is also referred to as a scoffer. And we see this kind of in two different ways. We've seen that the fool hates correction. We see here that the scoffer hates correction, or the scorner. And not only do they hate the correction, but they're going to hate the one that brings it to them. You point out my faults, this is what a scoffer is going to say. You point out my faults, they're going to be upset at you. They're going to be angry. They're going to hate you. They do not love the one that points out their wrongdoings. There's to me a great example of a scoffer would have been, I think that Herodias. Whenever John the Baptist pointed out his wrongdoing, did he say, John, thank you for bringing that to my attention? No, that is not how that was handled. Or as Ahab did Micaiah, and even if you want to go to a little bit more of a broader sense, the Pharisees and Jesus. Whenever Jesus would point out their wrongdoings, their legalistic ways, and He would tell them where they're messing up and how they're wrong, oh, they didn't like that, did they? No. And so that's how a scorner reacts. They cannot stand. Not only can they not stand to be corrected, but they're going to not like you either if you try to correct them. It also says, nor will they go to the wise. They will reject wisdom, and they'll remain trapped right where they're at. They're not going to go seek any other advice. They're not going to, these are the type of people that they're not going to come to you, or if you come to them and you try to correct them, and they may get mad at you, but they're not going to sit down and rationalize it later and think, well, let me go see if I can find some help on this. Let me go ask somebody else what they think. That would be logical if, of somebody, wouldn't it? That's not a scorner or scoffer. That's not what they do. They're just satisfied that they know what's right and everybody else is wrong. Verse 13. A merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken. If someone has happiness or joy, and we talk about this, that we teach our kids to sing, I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where? Somebody got it. Where? Down in my heart. Yeah. So, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing. And if the devil doesn't like it, he can sit on attack, right? We teach our kids to sing those types of songs. And we talk about, man, I've got the joy of the Lord in my heart. Well, let me just tell you, this is what, you say, well, where are you going with this? A merry heart makes a cheerful countenance. If you have the joy of the Lord in here, guess what? You ought to be able to see that. You ought to express that, right? It should overflow and reflect in our person, in our being. How else are people going to know, hey, you've got the joy of the Lord? I know they're not going to look at you just because you're happy and excited, but listen, it should be seen on your face. It was kind of I had a professor, a college professor, whenever I was in college, and he was, I'll just say this, and I love him, but he can be very, he can say some smart aleck things sometimes. And he was doing this on purpose because, listen, if you're going to act like a Christian, right, you got to act, you better tighten up. And, so a group of us were standing around laughing, cutting up one day, and he looked over at us and he said, hey, he said, why don't y'all wipe that smiles off your face and act like Christians? Because unfortunately, that's a lot of Christians, that's how they act. You can't have fun. You can't cut up. You've got to be so straight-laced. Listen, I look in the mirror every day. I know that God's got a sense of humor, okay? It's not, you don't have to, you're not going to convince me otherwise. But, he says, a merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance. You should have a cheerful countenance. You should show on your face. However, by sorrow of the heart, the spirit is broken. There are going to be times where, those who have a deep sorrow of heart, it too will display on their, it'll display their broken heart. That you can see it, and we can observe both the happy and the sad with understanding and sympathy for both a merry heart and those with sorrow of heart. It's going to show. But listen, as a child of God, we have to understand, if we want to claim it, you better show it, right? You need to put it on. That doesn't mean there's not going to be times where you might be broken, you might be upset, you might be hurting, but ultimately, what's inside is going to come out here. It's going to show on your face, or it should show on your face. Verse 14. The heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge, but the mouth of fools feedeth foolishness. Again, we've kind of seen this time and again, and I think if by the end of this, if nobody doesn't get the idea that a fool does not desire any kind of knowledge, any kind of wisdom, any kind of help, any kind of assistance along the way, and they're totally, they've got it all figured out. They don't need anybody else's opinions or any of that. Listen, that is a fool. That is foolishness. That is, ignorance. However you want to word it, it's what they want. The heart of him that hath understanding seeketh knowledge. You want that, then that's what you're going to do. If your heart's right and that's what you desire, you're going to seek after it. But the mouths of fools feedeth on foolishness. Make sure you determine which one you want to be. I want one that seeks after wisdom. I want to be one that learns and grows and matures. And this, I think it's interesting. This when it says that he feeds. There in the text, it says that he feeds on foolishness. This is a continual feast. This is just, I mean, really whenever you go down into verse 15, it says, all the days of the afflicted are evil, but he that is of a merry heart hath a continual feast. The fool, going back to verse 14, is continually feeding on foolishness. That's what he wants. That's what he goes to. And so here we get to verse 15, and he says, all the days of the afflicted are evil. To live in days of affliction is to know the trouble and evil of this fallen world. Hence, we recently have seen that, have we not? You can see, because we live here, we live in this afflicted world. We know the evil that is in it. But he who is of a merry heart has a continual feast. Again, that merry heart we talked about a while ago, that joy, that happiness that comes from the Lord. We can let the afflicted things around us affect us, right? However, we have to allow the joy that God has put in us to mark our attitudes towards life. I've seen, and I'm just not the type of person, I don't get caught up in the social media debates. If somebody wants my opinion, I'll be glad to share with you my opinions on things that took place. Whether we agree or don't agree, I don't care. However, and I've seen so many different opinions. There's one of the things that somebody said that pointed out that I absolutely agree with, and I'll share this with you. We live in an afflicted world, right? It is afflicted by sin. We can't expect ungodly people to act godly, right? It is what it is. I control how I live my life. I cannot control how you live your life. I cannot control how they live their life. What I do have to do is have a proper perspective on my life in this world and know that, listen, they can mock whoever they want to mock. They're not mocking Christians. Let's just be real. Who are they trying to mock? They're trying to mock God. Okay? I believe that with all my heart. They can. I don't care what the person came out and said. They weren't trying to offend anybody. It's okay. It is what it is. You have to lay down at night knowing what you did, and if you're at peace with that, I'm at peace with that. But I know that my Bible says that we're warned, hey, God is not going to be mocked. I know that there is coming a day when every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that He is Lord. They can do what they want to do right now. I have the opportunity. I can let that make me so angry and just be so fed up and just get so, or I can do what Solomon is saying here, saying, hey, listen, check your heart. Make sure, you live in an afflicted world. You see an afflicted world. You see the evil that's in it. However, let what God has put in you give you the proper perspective. Again, going back to, I continue to go back and allude to it, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Those people that did those things are not our enemies. God loves them just as much as He loves me. They have a choice to make. And I can be ugly, I can be hateful, I can call them whatever I want to, I can do all those things. But again, I have to, I'm here. I have to live here until the Lord calls me home, right? And so I have to make sure that I look at life and the proper, my attitude towards life is done based on that merry heart that God has given me. Verse 16. Better is little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble therewith. There's a song about that, isn't there? That's right. Little is much when God is in it. It's a good song, by the way. listen, it's not about, you can look at the material things that you have and say, well, I don't have very much. However, if the Lord's in it, you got all you need. You got more than you need. We live in a materialistic and consumer age where everybody wants more, wants more, wants more. We fear living with little. I'm going to tell you, the older I get, the more mature I get, the more I think the less I have, the better. Less headaches that come with it, right? Because he also says on the flip side of that, then, great treasure with trouble. He ain't wrong. Verse 17. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therewith. This is a proverb I'd have to read now if I got a point where I didn't have no meat on the table. Right? If you can't have meat, y'all remind me, go back and look at Proverbs 15, 17 now. All right? You ain't got no meat, it ain't the end of the world. It's a sad day. But better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therewith. The presence of love makes up for a lot, don't it? It can, I didn't grow up with having a whole lot, but I can tell you this, I knew that I was loved. I'll tell you that I see it firsthand that there are kids in this world that have everything that you can ever imagine. I mean, anything new comes out, they get it, no questions asked. All they have to do is say, can I? And it's yes. They get it, it's give to them. However, I'll tell you one of the things that those kids lack is they don't know if anybody loves them or not. That's not a, listen, I've learned a long time ago that you can't buy anybody's love. People choose whether or not they want to love somebody. And so love absolutely makes up for a lot, and even if it means living on a diet of herbs. Lord put that there for Jerry Riggs, by the way. Verse 18. A wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. This kind of goes back to verse number 1, doesn't it? Very similar. When strife is stirred up, it doesn't happen by accident. Usually the cause is a wrathful person stirring up strife. But he who is slow to anger, the second part of this verse, he is slow to anger, appeaseth strife, or allays contention. This person has a way of bringing peace and smoothing over contention instead of stirring up strife. Verse 19, the way of the slothful man is as an hedge of thorns, but the way of the righteous is made plain. Again, we've talked about the slothful man, and here Solomon talks about him again. Unfortunately, folks that are lazy don't often see it in themselves. They may more easily see the result of their laziness. They see that you can see the results, that's somebody who's slothful. They're not gonna see it in themselves, but they see it in their in the results of their laziness. But the way of the upright is a highway. Upright and hardworking. That's the wise person. Again, obviously the fool is the one that's slothful because he's not doing what he needs to be doing. He's being lazy. But the wise man or woman, they are upright and hardworking before the Lord. They're not going to have, when you look at this, the thorns that are going to grow up, and they're going to tend to things like they need to be tended to, and they're going to deal with things and not just being lazy about it. They're going to take care of things that need to be taken care of. Verse 20, a wise son maketh a glad father, but a foolish man despiseth his mother. Again, it brings joy to a father by the wisdom of his son, a wise son, for a couple reasons. Both knowing the blessing, for the blessing of knowing that there is good for the son, because somebody who's going to be and allow them to take heed to the wisdom that's been given to them and apply it. There's good in store for them. Also because it vindicates the father's trust in God and the training on the son in wisdom. But the foolish man despises his mother or brings disgrace. Really, and I think that you could look at it this way, and you could say his mother and father for both of them. Just to be honest with you, it's hurtful whenever if they reject the wisdom that's given to them from their mother and father. Verse 21. Folly is joy to him, foolishness is joy to him that is destitute of wisdom, but a man of understanding walketh uprightly. Again, we've seen similar to this in previous chapters, but the fool takes pleasure in foolishness. The only time a fool hates his foolishness, anybody know when? When it gets them in trouble, when they have to pay for it, when there's consequences that arise because of it. Then they're mad. Then they're not happy. But that's the only time that they hate it. Otherwise, it's joy to them. Boy, they love it. But a man of understanding walks uprightly. Listen, they're going to find joy in what is good and what is upright. So obviously, because they're not being foolish. Verse 22, without counsel, purposes are disappointed, but in the multitude of counselors they are established. Another way of reading the first part here of verse 22 is where it says without counsel, purposes are disappointed. Could also be read, without counsel, plans go awry. The difference between success and failure can often be found in those who plan without counsel. It would be foolish for somebody to set out to do anything, but just say, for an example, somebody wants to build a house. As a homeowner, this was how it was in Florida. It may not be this way here now. As the one building the home, you're allowed to pull permits. Like I said, I don't know if that's state of Georgia or not, but so I could say, I'm going to build a house, and just start calling people. Hey, I need this slab poured. Hey, I need this electrical pulled. Hey, I need this these rafters run. Hey, I need this block laid. Hey, I need this, whatever, go on. It'd be kind of foolish to do that without counsel, wouldn't it? Without, especially if you've never done it before. Somebody who's never done it, they probably should seek counsel. Wisdom understands that other people also have wisdom, right? I shouldn't do this on my own. I might need to seek counsel. And, listen, I think that very true of a pastor. I think a pastor ought to, seek counsel in things and talk to folks and that have done it before, because they're not the only ones, they're not the first ones, and they're not probably have other people that can help them along the way. But in the multitude of counselors, they are established. Again, sometimes it doesn't hurt to get counsel from multiple people, right? Again, we want godly counsel. We want counsel from people that are going to guide us and direct us in the right way. But sometimes it doesn't hurt to get counsel, from multiple people. Verse 23. Man hath joy by the answers of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season. How good is it? Or how good it is. Again, this is talking about words. Wise words have potential. Again, we can build up or we can tear down, right? We have the opportunity to bring joy to people by our words, or we have the opportunity to destroy. And the value of a good word is sometimes not only found in the content. There's a lot of times people will say stuff and we don't even consider the contents of what they're saying. But sometimes saying things in the right time is just as important as what's being said. And that goes in. I say this all the time, that communication in some of the premarital counseling that I do, that communication is made up of a lot of different areas. It's in, you communicate by your facial expressions, you communicate by how you say something, you communicate by the contents of what you say. And in reality, 99% of, and that's a made up statistic, by the way, that's just Jerry's statistic. Most of our communication is not in the contents. How it's received is not in the contents of what we're saying. It's our facial expressions, our tone of voice, sometimes the timing of what we say. And that's what's being said here, is that, hey, in due season, the timing of you saying something, a word spoken, the right word at the right time, is a powerful force for good. And so be mindful of that even that's why, to me, something, everybody needs a little pick-me-up every now and then, don't they? Everybody does. And sometimes just a simple, I'm praying for you. There's not a whole lot of content there, right? It's pretty simple to understand. But I tell you, it can do somebody's soul good. Sometimes just and I appreciate you, can go a long ways with somebody. Because, hey, again, there's not a lot of content there. Just want you to know you're appreciated. It goes a long ways. And so, again, that's what Solomon is saying here when he talks about that in due season. Verse 24. The way of life is above to the wise, that he may depart from hell beneath. One of the great benefits of a life of wisdom is that if you're serious about listening and taking and heeding advice and wisdom, guess what? Life can get better as you go on. Life gets better as you go on. If you're willing to take and see the benefits of a life of wisdom, because it progresses their life upward, not downward. They move in the right way, but he that may turn away from hell below. The progress of a wise life isn't, again, not just in what it heads up, but in what it moves away from. When you adhere and are all about a life of wisdom, as Solomon is talking about here, getting counsel when counsel is needed, allowing people to correct you whenever correction is needed, using the wisdom that has been given to you, I'm just going to tell you, you certainly eliminate or miss out on a lot of, I'm trying to think if I should say it this way or not. I'm just going to say it. If it offends you, I apologize. It's not. But a life of wisdom, and whenever you allow yourself to be taught and instructed, and you follow through with those things, and you adhere to the things, listen, you eliminate yourself from a lot of the hell you're going to have to go through on this earth. I can't think of a better way to put it. I mean, he's talking about turning away from the hell below. Obviously, we could go the salvation route, that wisdom is giving your life to Christ and turning away from the literal hell. But this is this is things that I believe we go through here in this life as a refusal to allow wisdom to be a part of our lives. Verse 25. The Lord will destroy the house of the proud, but He will establish the border of the window. He will destroy the house of the proud, but He will establish the border or the boundary of the window. Listen, we've seen it. God does not delight, He does not get any pleasure in somebody who is prideful. And we know that pride goeth before the fall, destruction. But He will establish the boundary of the window. This window is the picture of and representative of a needy person who looks to and depends on God. Verse 26. The thoughts of the wicked are an abomination to the Lord, but the words of the pure are pleasant words. The thoughts of the wicked are an abomination. So again, not just their actions, their thoughts are an abomination. He does not take any delight in them, but the words of the pure are pleasant. Solomon knew that a person's thoughts, where do our words begin? As thoughts, right? Our words begin as, Solomon knew that. Solomon knew our words begin as thoughts, and so their thoughts are ultimately be revealed by their words, and God hears the words of the pure and is pleased, contrasting with the thoughts of the wicked. Verse 27. He that is greedy of gain troubleth his own house, but he that hateth gifts shall live. And that's obviously not talking about that, somebody offers you a gift, you should just turn every gift away. There's a difference between being greedy and being appreciative. And, listen, greed will not bring anybody and do any benefits. He says you trouble your own house whenever you get greedy. But he that hateth gifts shall live. And this gifts here is not really, it's not even really gifts as much as it is like a bribe. You can't be bought, in other words. And, you can't, somebody wants to bribe you, you're not okay with that. Verse 28, the heart of the righteous studieth to answer, but the mouth of the wicked poureth out evil things. So the heart of the righteous studies on how to answer. It's simply, what one says in response. Again, this kind of goes along with thinking before you speak, right? Don't just spit it out. Think about what you should and will say. Not just reacting on, not on impulse and reaction. But the mouth of the wicked pours forth evil. Again, a lack of self-control when it comes to the things we say. I think is the easiest way to describe that. Verse 29, the Lord is far from the wicked, but He heareth the prayer of the righteous. And again, far from the wicked. Why are the wicked far from the Lord? Not living in His will. Did the Lord move or did they move? They moved. So I think we often read that and we see that the Lord is far from the wicked. Listen, God has not withdrawn Himself from them. They have withdrawn themselves from Him. And so I talked about this recently that we're sometimes we move way over there. Again, the children of Israel in Malachi, I think, is where we talked about this recently. That they were where they were because of their own doing. They're the ones that strayed away from God. They're the ones that got further and further away. And so, yes, if you're righteous and you're living for Him and you're walking with Him daily, He's going to hear you much. Listen, the wicked, they're not even in tune they don't desire to hear him, and so they're probably not even talking to him. But and until they're repentant, he's not going to hear them. Verse 30. The light of the eyes rejoiceth the heart, and a good report maketh the bones fat. What are our eyes? Our eyes are for our body. They're kind of like a lamp, aren't they? They when eyes are full of light, it brings happiness and contentment to the heart and the whole body. So he says a good report makes the bones healthy. Good news, right? You hear, if all you hear, I want you to think about this. If all you hear is negative, bad, I mean just doom and gloom all the time, what's that going to do for you? It's going to put you in that same manner. You're going to feel that same way. Be honest with you, that's why I don't watch the news. I don't. Because it's all negative. Doesn't matter. Media is the only ones that I've ever seen be able to take something positive and make something negative out of it. But if that's all we listen to and that's all we take in, then guess where we're going to be? We're going to be the same way. He says a good report, good news is beneficial to the body. Brings health to the body. Verse 31. The ear that heareth reproof of life abideth among the wise. Again, here's not everybody's going to listen to correction, but there's a blessing for those that do. And life has its own rebukes for those who have the ear to hear, and in general, life rewards wisdom and rebukes folly. And that's one of the more important aspects of wisdom is the simple ability to hear and to learn. And if we can't learn, we'll never abide among the wise. Verse 32, he that refuseth instruction despiseth his own soul, but he that heareth reproof getteth understanding. Again, you have a choice. Either you can listen and accept instruction, or you can refuse it. But if you're refusing it, you're hurting yourself. You're hurting yourself. It says, but he that heareth reproof getteth understanding. There's benefits in that correction, right? Whether it's from our parents growing up, whether it's from our bosses at work, if they're correcting us, if we've done something wrong, if it's God, if it's whatever it is, there's benefits to that. We gain understanding from that. The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. Again, we got to humble ourselves and understand that, hey, it's one of the hardest things sometimes for some people to understand is that, guess what? There's not one of us in here that knows it all, right? None of us know it all. Not to everything, not to anything. We don't know it all. We don't know all that there is to know. And so there is a sense of humbling that has to take place for us to admit that, for us to acknowledge that. And so before honor is humility. You can't get to a point where you do know things until you humble yourself and do that. However, if we want, instruction and wisdom, it starts with a right and proper reverence and fear for the Lord. Because all wisdom is given by Him, right? It all comes from Him in some way, shape, or form. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, or questions tonight?